Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Module 4. This is where we try to tie it all together. And what we want to do this morning is have more of a conversation with you, to learn from you as senior leaders, given Modules 1 through 3, your thoughts about national security strategy, what it should look like, how it should be developed, who has responsibility for it, and what challenges we need to overcome in terms of implementation. So I'll start by trying to think through why we need strategy to begin with, and then talk a bit about the definition. The why comes before the definition because for reasons that hopefully will become obvious. And then we'll talk a bit more about what constitutes strategy, what are the key elements, and then we'll have a conversation amongst ourselves about practical considerations. This session, and in fact the whole seminar, we're focusing not so much on, nice thoughts or nice words or nice documents, but we want to equip you as senior leaders to be able to make the transformational and sustained changes in your various institutions and countries. So let's start with why we need strategy. And if you remember, last week we had the discussion at the National Defense University. This chart is from the chapter in the book, and I'm trying hard to get copies of the books for as many of you as we could. So at the end of this session, if you're very, very, very interested in the book, which is only in English, let me know, and we might be able to mail you a copy. But what this chart looks at, it looks at two dimensions of the social contract, which I think are very important. To my mind, it's a schematic of where we are in government, with the relationship between governments and the people. That's the top circle. And government and external actors, which is the second circle. The first circle is your classic social contract theory, where the government is obligated to provide services and security for the people, and the people in turn pay taxes and owe allegiance to the government. That's the bargain. One of the things that we discussed in an earlier session that Kate alluded to is that the governments don't derive their funding from people's taxes. So they don't pay attention to the people, they pay attention to the source of their funding, which is in the bottom circle. The top circle breaks down because as we talked through the various forms of legitimacy, the issue of performance legitimacy challenges us and challenges the model, because it breaks down the people into those for the regime and those against the regime. And because of that shift, it's very difficult to see how the services, how the security benefits all people. It ends up benefiting some of the people some of the time, but most of the people none of the time. And again, one of the points we've been making is the importance of having the whole security effort focusing on all citizens and not just segments of the citizens. This is a simplistic schematic, but the segmentation is not just political. It could be ethnic, it could be based on religion, it could be based on ideology, but all of these things make that top circle break down, and the social contract becomes ineffective. But the second circle at the bottom is the governments and their relationship to both natural resources and foreign aid. And here what happens is the foreign aid and or natural resource actors provide both inflows, i.e. either investment or development assistance dollars, and influence, because They want someone with whom they could either do business or interact. And the government, in turn, offer them assurances of longevity, of access, of continued trade and influence, and concessions, which is what we discussed late last week about illicit financial flows from Africa. Somewhere in the region of bottom estimates, about 60 billion every year leaves the continent because of that. What these two circles show is that both domestically and externally, the security landscape and architecture in Africa is very complex. Ad hoc plans and programs are probably going to solve one problem today, or solve some of the problems some of the time, but not all the problems all of the time. And therefore, African countries have to think creatively about how to make both circles work in a way that delivers security for all Africans over a long period of time. And that's where strategy comes in. Because with strategy, you have in mind a vision, where you're going. And then you think about, what do I have? What resources do I have to get me there? And how do I use those resources in a way that's not just accountable and transparent, but that is closely aligned to your vision or your end state? So this is the backdrop against which a lot of our conversation and our discourse has revolved. And it's very important for us to have this in mind, because generally when we think a national security strategy or a maritime security strategy, our minds automatically go to that document or that government plan or that government policy. We don't think about it as a tool that makes us more effective leaders and that enables us as leaders and as fellow citizens to move our countries from where they are to where we would like them to be. So in a nutshell, that's why I think we need strategy when we're thinking about security. We have the senior leaders here, we have all the brain power, so we're going to brainstorm together about, how we craft this thing that's called strategy and what it means for us in the context of security for all. Which brings me to the next point, which is, how do we define security? If I were to ask for the first four hands to go up and give me your short definition of security, of strategy. That's why I have Ben here. He keeps me honest. Have your definition of strategy, of security strategy. What would it be? How would you define security strategy? In your experience, what is security strategy? I'll volunteer folk if I don't see any hands. I see Jonas, like am I there, am I not there? Should I take the plunge? We'll start with Jonas and then from Morocco. Please use your microphone.
For me, security strategy is identifying the source of long-term as well as medium and short-term threats. Is the threat hunger? Is the threat maybe my bad neighborhood, say with Eritrea or South Sudan or Somalia? And my strategy is thinking in terms both internally. Am I really delivering social contracts? Am I fulfilling what I promised in election campaign? Have I got that true grant, permission, or legitimacy from the people? Does the sovereignty really lie in the people, or is it in my power? So how much am I really trusted by them, and how much do I trust? So then if we have this common understanding, if both what I've identified as long-term, i.e. the sources of threat both internally and externally, then do I have the people behind me? Are we working together? That would be for me the most important one. And where is the source of my strategy papers developing? Is it from internal or is it from external? Am I preparing for external threat like in security dilemma aspect, or am I also at the same time being granted full permission from society? So do those internal national interests, which constitutes a strategy for security, do they really come from the people, or is it from my party interest, regime interest? So these are some of the points I would definitely see as part of or components of security strategy.
Moi, tout rapidement, je dirais que la définition de la stratégie est aussi difficile que la définition de la sécurité, parce que ça dépend dans quel contexte on se place. Si l'on revient à la définition classique de la sécurité qui confinait la sécurité de celle des États, donc il va se placer dans le domaine militaire et dire que la stratégie, comme on l'a appris dès le départ dans les cours de stratégie, il s'agit de l'art de conduire la guerre. Et donc c'est une option purement militaire. Alors que la sécurité, avec son développement aujourd'hui, la stratégie, dans le sillage du développement de la notion de sécurité, elle a elle aussi connu un développement et on la considère, moi je la considère de toute façon, comme l'a défini un chercheur anglo-saxon, le Canadien Charles-Philippe David, et lui, il dit que la stratégie, elle permet la définition des objectifs de la sécurité et des moyens pour réaliser ces objectifs. Donc la stratégie doit, dans tous les cas, rester au service de la sécurité. Voilà.
Thank you very much. Anyone else brave enough from Liberia?
I will add to what both speakers have said. Now that we have a paradigm shift in how security is looked at, is the strategy take into consideration both the traditional security, which is quite important stay in the security narrative, and then the human security, which also have added to the security dimension. So it's that point where a country set to identify where the needs are, where the threats are, you make the assessment and then make a plan as to how to address those needs with a clear objective, sometimes with timeline as to how to achieve them.
Thank you very much. We'll come back. I see a couple of hands, but we'll come back to this conversation. But there are important things that the three of you have highlighted. Jonas talked about the importance of identifying, what your focus is. He also mentioned the importance of having a common understanding, and then understanding the source of the authority. Okay. From Morocco, important distinction that the traditional definition of security is not what would work across the continent, because we're not facing traditional threats, and as a Liberian colleague mentioned, there has been a paradigm shift, and which necessitates a different approach to strategy. He also talked about defining objectives. Definitionally, there are a number of ways you could go. And we could give you a reading list that's as long as, you would like, and you still wouldn't come up with that nice, crisp definition that satisfies every aspect. Up here I have, the father of the traditional definition. I have the dictionary definition, and I have a definition in one of the readings that we provided by Robert Kennedy. If you haven't gone to access it on GlobalNet, I would encourage you to do so, because it does three important things that helps us start thinking about a creative framework for strategy. The first thing, which I really like, he borrows from the business school. And there is a Japanese scholar, Kenichi Ome, who talks about strategy not being a document, but strategy being a state of mind. It's a way of thinking. So for you as strategic leaders, it's not, when you think strategy, it's not about a new document you have to produce that, encapsulates this paradigm shift. It's a different way of thinking. And he goes on, the second thing I like in this paper is that he distinguishes between concerns and objectives. He says, first, you have to identify the concerns. Because as Jonas and a colleague from Morocco rightly mentioned, you need to look at the threats. But as we discussed in Module 2, there are many. And there's so much for you to handle. So he says, first you understand the concerns. What are the national concerns as far as security is concerned? Then you have to define your own objectives. What do you, as a strategic leader, want to accomplish over time? And that's the second thing I like. And the third thing I like about his definitional this discourse is that he talks about options and flexibility. And he gives an example of the fog of war, that once you actually try to start implementing it, all options go on the table, you do need flexibility. And so you're not tied to a document. You have a mindset that enables and prepares you to move the discussion forward. So in his paper, Kennedy defines strategy as the integrated application of available means to accomplish desired ends. And by available means, he's talking about the instruments of national power. I'm not sure how well this translates in French and Portuguese, but it's really neat in English because the first one is DIME, is the acronym for the word DIME. And the second, which is a little bit more expanded, which I prefer, is midlife. Because it looks at the military, then the intelligence, law enforcement, information, and as an economist, I like that they separate financial and the economic. And because this starts to let you see the various components that have to be part of this strategy. I think the participant from Liberia was really, really great in identifying this shift. So we're not fighting traditional war. We are trying to address a security problem that is multifaceted. And because it is multifaceted, you really do need to have more than your traditional approach. There has to be a way to have a balanced and integrated way to include information, the media, communication strategies, diplomacy. Law enforcement is important, because we mentioned in Module 2, a lot of the threats are internal. And then the financial and the economic. And it becomes incumbent upon you as leaders not just to know how you address how you incorporate all of these, but how you get a balance. So you actually have a strategy that is appropriate. But as Robert Kennedy mentions in his article, you do need flexibility, meaning your approach to national security strategy must not be static. It has to be dynamic, or what some people would call a living document, something you would return to and you would modify as you go ahead. Oh, no apology necessary.
Yeah, just maybe you could do on the behind, because we may have a bit of confusion on financial and economic. Maybe if you could just briefly distinguish the two for us. Thanks.
Okay, economic generally in this context relates to the welfare, the socio-economic, the social and economic, health, education, etc. And financial is more employment related, the use of financial projects and financial incentives to achieve security goals, and also the provision of finance. In the next session, we'll be talking a lot more about the financial side of things. So that's the distinction. So we've talked about why we need security strategy. We've talked a little bit about the problems defining it, particularly the context of this, shift. We've, briefly highlighted some of the key instruments of national power. And now, my second question to you as a group is, what should determine your strategy, your approach to strategy? Is it the vision you have? Do you develop a strategy from a vision? Or is your strategy dependent upon how much you have by way of resources? Is it dependent on how much human capacity you have? Should it be dependent on what the donors who fund a lot of our budgets want, both bilateral and multilateral? Or should it depend on what the citizens want? What should define security strategy in African countries? A friend from DRC.
Oui, merci. Ce qui devrait définir la stratégie, à mon avis, c'est la vision. Il faut d'abord savoir ce que nous voulons. Pour nous, et une vision, pour moi, c'est pas juste un rêve, hein, c'est une vision qui est construite, qui est élaborée et qui est basée sur, n'est-ce pas, la connaissance de l'environnement dans lequel nous sommes. Et à partir du moment où on a défini la vision, maintenant, on va chercher les moyens. Parce que si on veut, dans le cadre des pays africains, parce qu'on entend ça souvent, on n'a pas de moyens. Et ça, on le dit très souvent. Moi, un exemple personnel, quand j'arrivais dans la structure que je dirige, on me disait toujours qu'il n'y avait pas les moyens. Et donc, j'ai fait mettre sur le fronton de la structure, les ressources sont limitées, mais la créativité est illimitée. Et donc, depuis cet instant, on se bat tous pour atteindre nos objectifs. Donc, je pense que le plus important pour les leaders, c'est de définir qu'est-ce que nous voulons, quelle est la vision d'abord. Et comme je le dis également, cette vision ne doit pas être simplement un rêve, mais ça doit être adossé à la réalité de l'espace dans lequel nous vivons, en prenant en compte tous les aspects de la vie que nous menons. Et à partir de là, maintenant, nous allons rechercher les ressources pour atteindre cette vision. Merci.
Thank you. I have the gentleman right at the back. I'll take as many as I can, maybe about 5. Sir, right at the back.
Oh, ben voilà. C'est là la vraie République démocratique du Congo. Mon collègue d'avant, c'est la Côte d'Ivoire, en fait. Qu'à cela ne tienne, on est tous frères africains, je crois que c'est le plus important. Mais pour moi, je procédais plutôt par élimination. Est-ce que ma stratégie nationale doit-elle être dirigée par les ressources? Je dirais non. C'est vrai qu'une stratégie doit s'adapter aux ressources qu'on a, dont on dispose. Et il faut l'adapter, mais je pense que les ressources aussi, la hauteur des ressources peuvent finalement affaiblir une stratégie et affaiblir l'objectif qu'on voudrait atteindre. Ça risque de cantonner ses rêves ou ses objectifs. Les capacités, autant comme pour les ressources, je pourrais peut-être pas tenter de définir ma stratégie en fonction des capacités, parce que ça me permet d'arrondir par les bas les objectifs que je voudrais atteindre. Je procède donc par l'élimination, je continue. Par les donateurs également, c'est un peu plus compliqué parce que c'est aléatoire. Je ne pourrais quand même pas développer ma stratégie sur base des donateurs. Ça relève de l'espoir, c'est éphémère. J'éliminerai également de ce point de vue-là. Les citoyens, oui et non. Enfin, c'est vrai que l'objectif ne devait pas être... les stratégies ne devaient pas être dirigées par les citoyens. Je prends simplement une image en droit, on est juriste, on dit souvent, les jours où le peuple entre dans les prétoires, la justice va sortir. Je ne veux pas minimiser la capacité d'un peuple, mais je pense qu'il faut toujours le leadership, doit pouvoir tout le moins être au-dessus du peuple, avoir un esprit qui va au-delà. Il doit orienter le peuple et pas se laisser orienter par le peuple, parce que ça dépend aussi du niveau de cette conscience objective du peuple en tout cas. Donc je reviens sur la vision. Je pense pour moi en tout cas la vision, contrairement à mon interlocuteur précédent, je crois que la vision doit être alimentée par quelqu'un l'a dit, par un rêve. Il faut rêver, il faut voir juste, correct, mais il faut rêver. Voilà, merci.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Merci.
Okay, no, we'll have him first and then you.
Okay. On dit souvent que le colonel-major Schmengi de la Tunisie, donc on dit souvent qu'un pays fait la politique de ses moyens. Donc parlons de politique, c'est bien entendu, c'est les objectifs, c'est la vision. Et les moyens, c'est bien entendu, c'est les ressources humaines, les ressources financières dont un pays peut disposer pour atteindre les objectifs tracés. Merci.
Bien, merci. Dominique Zouré du Burkina Faso. Pour moi, la stratégie, c'est la combinaison originale, j'insiste sur le mot original, des 4 variables que sont les ressources, les capacités, les donateurs et les citoyens. Et ces combinaisons, chaque facteur prend une importance particulière en fonction des contextes. Pour une même vision, l'on peut avoir donc plusieurs stratégies qui prennent en compte ces variables, qui seront d'importance variable en fonction des contextes. Merci.
Okay. We have the gentleman in the leather jacket, yes?
Thank you. I think strategy, the center of gravity of strategy should be citizen-centric led. That is the motivation. If you are sensitive about your citizen, it gives you that motivation, and that is where the vision will come from. Then others will follow, the resources, the capacity, and the donor. But if you don't have your citizen to channel your sense of strategy, even the vision to develop it will not be there. So I think it should be citizen-centric driven. Thank you.
Thank you. In interest of time, I'll take just 3 more. I see many hands going up. I'll start with the gentleman in front.
Je suis le colonel Abanda du Cameroun. Je voudrais parler de la vision. Je crois que votre question portait finalement sur la vision. Pour dire que la vision, pour moi, c'est un sentiment qu'on a, un sentiment réaliste, une perception réaliste qu'on a du devenir de soi et de son peuple. Et à partir de ce moment-là, ce sentiment génère un ensemble de moyens, puisqu'on dit effectivement que c'est la fin qui justifie les moyens. Et il y a des moyens qui peuvent être directement rattachés à un certain nombre de visions, à un certain nombre d'objectifs, et les voies par lesquelles nous devons passer pour atteindre ces voies-là, ou pour atteindre ces objectifs.
Gentleman here.
Thank you very much. I would like to say that national security strategies should be, led by almost all what you've listed there. However, I wanted you to clarify one thing. I think strategy is supposed to be policy-driven, and therefore, first and foremost, you should have national security policy that would drive the national security strategy. So before you can talk about strategies, you must have policies that you can draw from when you are preparing your strategies. Thank you.
And the gentleman who's been really patient, right at the back.
I I also want to support some of the views, but I want to agree that strategy should be vision-led, but that vision must be realistic, which I'm sure that people have mentioned. And therefore, for the vision to be realistic, it has to be dependent on the other variables, the resources, the capacity, the donors, and the citizen consideration, the citizens taking into consideration their needs. So it must be vision-led, but it is dependent on a realistic vision, which will be dependent on the other variables.
Thank you very much. We could continue this conversation and get a lot of input, but the right answer is, it's a combination of all. They're all important in their own ways, but the most important thing for me, as far as strategy is concerned, is one, it has to focus on an end state. You need to be pointing in one direction. And that direction, as we've mentioned, is not aligned with the traditional definitions of security or traditional approaches to strategy. The direction is focused on the welfare, the security, and the stability of every citizen. Every citizen needs to share in that. The second important thing for me is the process. We have a lot of, and the process is important because, as a number of you have mentioned, this is not just about war fighting anymore. It's about war fighting, it's about law enforcement, it's about social welfare, it's about economic enhancements. And so you need a process that's not just bottom up, that listens to every constituency, but also ensures that the various sectors are all working in concert together. My third point is that the strategies themselves need to reflect reality in your respective countries. Reality in terms of resources, reality in terms of capacity, and reality in terms of threat assessment. It makes no sense to have a really, really nice document bound and in glossy printing that bears no reality with your country or your country's capacity to execute and implement it. And so those are three important things I want to highlight when it comes to national security strategy. So before I move on, by show of hands, how many of us know that our countries have a national security strategy? If we just raise your hand. How many countries have that you have seen and read yourselves? How many countries have national security strategies that incorporate the law enforcement, the economic, the financial, all the instruments of national power? Show of hands. It's very interesting because more hands came up after. These become the guiding documents. And these documents, or these strategies, should reflect not just the thinking of a few people in air-conditioned offices, but it should reflect the will and the needs of every citizen. How many of you have national strategies that are publicly accessible, that if I Google it, I'll find it? That's interesting. That is interesting as well, because if this is a guiding document for all citizens, it makes, I think, to me, makes sense for all citizens to know where we are going together as a country, right? To some extent, but we could get back to this during the Q&A. Let me conclude with some practical considerations. The first practical consideration is we have the goals. Our goals, by default will be very lofty because the security challenges are deep and numerous across the African continent. It's very important within the context of strategy to break down your goals into manageable steps. So if you're doing a strategy to counter Boko Haram, for instance, your goal is not we're going to defeat and deter. You want to break that down in how we're going to do it, what we do first, what we do second, and what we do concurrently, so that you have a clear understanding of where you're going. This is important for the third point I mentioned in Robert Kennedy's article, because as soon as you begin implementation, there's going to be need for flexibility. So if you don't have the manageable steps laid out, your contention becomes with your overarching goal, not with how you're getting there. And so you really need the manageable steps. Second, I think you have to be sure, 100%, that you're not trying to solve the wrong problem. Many times, we are doing really well.
Au fait, je pense que le deuxième tiré n'est pas bien traduit, de sorte que la nuance est difficile à percevoir. On dit s'assurer qu'on n'essaye pas de résoudre le problème qui n'en a pas besoin. Je crois que la traduction pose un problème, ce qui fait que je n'ai pas perçu la nuance de l'idée. Je ne voulais pas que l'idée m'échappe.
Il faut problème.
Okay. It is, and again, one of the reasons I have Ben here is not that he's a working, not just that he's a walking encyclopedia, he's also a walking dictionary. He says, I should say false problem. Okay, so does that translate well? Yeah. Sorry about if the screen is a little off. But there are many times we try to solve a problem. We work really hard on solving that problem. But if we're not solving the right problem, which might be social, which might be ethnic, which might be land-based, we need to understand the problem and analyze the problem well, so we are focusing on solving the right problem. The third, I don't know how many times I've heard people say you have to think outside the box. I disagree with that. I think you have to start by looking inside the box, because the answer might be there before you think outside the box. And in most African countries, the default when you're coming to do something is, oh, what could I copy from somewhere else? Rather than, talking to our people. Talk to our people. They're inside the box. They have lived through insecurity. They know how to navigate insecurity. And they could probably tell you how to do it a lot better than if you read it in a book or you listen to somebody like me. And so let's start by thinking inside the box, and then later on we can think outside the box. But many of the answers are already inside the box. Fourth, I think you have to develop multiple scenarios, because the landscape is shifting really quickly. Almost every year we have a new threat or a new permutation of a threat. And so if you have like a 5-year strategy, in year 2, a lot of what you have in your document has already been overtaken by events. So developing multiple scenarios right from the beginning helps put you in the right place. Unpack and understand the status quo, that's obvious, and then align organizational capacity with desired goals. Final thoughts. Strategy is all about the ends, the ways, and the means. Strategy is not just about war fighting, particularly in Africa. Strategy is about thinking creatively about how you use everything at your disposal in an integrated and coordinated manner to affect the change that you're looking for. Key issues, to my mind, are coordination, monitoring, flexibility, resources, trust, timing, and consistency. Thank you very much.